Hello, everyone. My name is Rafal, and I would like to welcome everyone to my Headshot and Portrait Photography podcast. Today, I have a special guest, Therese Asplund, amazing photographer. As I mentioned before we started, I've been following you for quite some time. Your work is speak volumes. It's extremely creative. Um, I could go on and on and on.
Yeah,
So I
thank
just
you
want to
so
say
much.
huge thank you for accepting my invitation
Of
and joining the
course.
podcast. I'm thrilled to talk to you. I have probably a billion questions, but we have probably cut it off some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for joining. I just want to really talk to you about your amazing art, and I know there's some time difference between us because we're living on completely different continents. So thank you for
Yeah,
making this work and joining the show today.
of course, of course. There's nothing more fun than talk about photography, is it?
Absolutely, I know photographers. We not only like take photos, but I think also
We
we
love to talk about
love to
it.
talk
Yeah.
about it. So let me start, and I just want to kind of dive into your world. And typically, what I want to know first, how did you get into photography in the first place? Because I know that every photographer's kind of has own journey. Sometimes we get there by the passion. Sometimes we get there accidentally. I know I've heard a lot of different stories, but tell me a little bit more about how did you start photography and how this kind of journey started with you.
Yeah, actually, I have there is like a recording of me when I'm 6 years old, when I my cousin did like an interview for school, where I said that I wanted to be a photographer when I grew up. So I guess it's always been there. I inherited my grandma's old camera when I was like
Mhm.
5 or 6 years old. So I've kind of I grew up with the camera in my hand basically,
Mhm.
and I was loved horses. So there were a lot of horse pictures in my albums. And I photographed everything, friends and my siblings and family vacations and yeah, that
Mhm.
sort of stuff. But then as I grew older and it came to the point where you needed to like choose your path in life,
Mhm.
and go for some kind of an education. Um, I think I was like 18 at the time, and by then pursuing photography didn't really feel like a secure choice or a
Mhm.
grown up choice. It to me it kind of felt like I said I wanted to be a rock star.
Mhm.
So I went for I did go to the university and I studied some English and I studied some media and communications and stuff that kind of leaned into photography a little bit, but I couldn't really figure out what I wanted to do. So I took a job at a camera store,
Mhm.
also because there was kind of photography in that. And I was supposed to work there for 1 year just to
Mhm.
figure figure things out and decide what I wanted to do. I ended up staying for 17 years. So
Oh wow.
that was actually my first career.
Mhm.
I worked as a store manager, and I really loved the work in the store. I'm a very sociable person, so the selling process and meeting all the clients and um, yeah, I really loved it, and also being a manager and having my staff and take care of them, and it all I liked it very much. But
Mhm.
then I started to build a studio on the side because it
Mhm.
one of the stores where I worked actually had a old studio in the basement that no one used. So I started to hang out there after work,
Mhm.
experimenting a little bit, and I didn't know anything about studio lighting, but I can tell you that once I tried
Mhm.
proper portrait lighting, I think
Mhm.
that's when I really fell in love with photography. So it's
Mhm.
kind of always been lighting from the start as well.
Mhm.
And then I yeah. after a little while, I got two kids. And also then you go on maternity leave and you are like away from work for a year, and you get to thinking about uh, what you want to do with your life a second
Mhm.
time. And then I decided that I wanted to pursue photography. So I opened up my studio and I quit my other job. And that
Mhm.
was nearly 20 years ago. So,
Wow.
uh, yeah. So it's a hint about
So,
how old I am as well.
mhm.
No,
So what
they were.
drawn you? So what drawn you into portraiture? Because I know you can take completely different paths when it comes to
Yeah.
photography, right? You can shoot weddings, you can shoot landscapes, you can shoot portraiture. So what drawn you into photographing people? So that's my first part of the question, and then the next one, what I want to kind of like dive in, because your images, they're extremely creative. So what I'm trying to ask you is, you started with like a regular portraiture, and then you slowly started kind of like pushing the creativity into them, or you just kind of start like right from the get-go, you just like, okay, I want to be more creative, I want to put a little bit more work into those images, make them a little bit more meaningful, visually more interesting. Because there's like, I think a lot of photographers out there who, let's say, shoot portraiture, but it seems like you took this to completely different level. You just expand this portraiture to kind of level where, as I said, it's not just like you just pulling your images out of your head. You really putting a lot of work into them, and it seems every detail. And that's what I also love about your work. It's not just looking at those images, but also I love to analyze them, like, what all those little details you put into that image to make it look the way it is. Because I think, I know like a lot of photographers do the shortcuts, right? Like, they get good face expression, but in your case, there's a lot of dedication and additional work, which just makes those images look absolutely stunning.
Oh, that's so many nice words. Thank you so much. I think for me it was like, uh, as for why it's portraiture. I think it's just my love for people. I
Hmm.
love to hang out with people, and I love that there is always a collaboration between
Hmm.
me and my model. It's something that we do together, and I love to the teamwork part of it. So, and also I think I can admire a landscape picture and think
Hmm.
it's outstanding. But when I try to do something similar, I always find myself thinking, what if there was a person standing there? So I think I'm a portrait photographer by heart. That's who I am. But as for the creative process, I think it was like two different paths, because when I started out, almost immediately fell in love with the lighting process,
Hmm.
and working with my model, and angles and expressions and things like that. So in the beginning, I really, really wanted to just be a good photographer. So I wanted to do it the right way. I wanted to have the image ready in camera. I wanted to
Hmm.
do proper lighting, a proper crop, everything, so that I came as close to the final result
Hmm.
in camera as possible. And that took some time because I think that the at least the first 10 years of my career, I focused mainly on being a better photographer, being better at the craft. But then, on the other hand, I've always been growing up. I when we had parties and were going out clubbing, I was always the one drinking my wine in the bathroom, doing all the other girls' makeups.
Hmm.
So, and I think I've always cut people's hair. I think I did my first bridal hair styling when I was 17. So I've always done makeup, I've always done hair, and
Hmm.
I've always been into different kind of arts and crafts,
Hmm.
sewing things and making things. So what I eventually did was just putting the two together.
Mm-hmm.
pretty much. So this is the work that I do today, that I do just for me,
Mm-hmm.
is basically a combination of what I like to do most.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's what you're supposed to do with the time you can manage yourself. Just do
Yeah.
things that make you happy, and this is the things that makes me happy. So yeah,
Mm-hmm. So tell me a little bit more about the creative process, because we'll go into some technicalities later on, because this is something
yeah,
which it seems you mastered a long time ago, and this is not something which, like it's just any issue or challenge, because I know your lighting is spot on, and like it seems like, but you took this to, as I said, to completely different level. And what I'm trying to kind of explore a little bit more. Tell me a little bit more for your creative process. So let's say you have some idea, probably starts in our mind, and
yeah,
then let's kind of talk a little bit about the execution, like how you prepare for specific shot. So, like you
yeah,
just putting whole thing together, you do some mood boards, how this idea comes from mind to, let's say, the kind of plan, and then to kind of actually doing the shoot and creating that images. If this is like a massive transformation throughout this process, or just kind of like exactly what you want and you kind of go for it. So
yeah,
if we could just kind of discuss, because I also noticed that there's a lot of photographers out there who how can I kind of explain this? They have some ideas, and then they try to kind of make this work, but it seems like exactly what you're going after, because each image has that feel that that every detail matters. And I just want to kind of discuss this, how this whole process look from your end.
yeah. I think it's a little bit of both, actually.
Hmm.
I do a lot of workshops in creative photography and
Hmm.
creative portrait photography, and I what I hear a lot is people saying that, I'm not creative. I don't know how you get
Hmm.
these ideas. And I claim that you can't sit around and wait to be creative. You
Hmm.
have to like create it yourself. But also it's a matter of, once you get going, if you do one project, then you instantly, just by doing that creative project and working with it, you get like three new ideas for projects
Hmm.
that you want to do. So but from time to time, I tend to, the more the props, or if I use a location, or like the underwater shoots that I did, uh, the more I have a time limit for when
Hmm.
I need to shoot it, the more I plan ahead. And then I very often use a mood board, and I
Hmm.
do that for two reasons. One is so that I can go through the idea in my head before I do it. Because I tend to, when I have an idea and then I just book a model and I set it up and then I just shoot.
Hmm.
Very often, I kind of, in the middle of the shoot, I come to think of, oh, this would have looked good if I had a dog or a big watch,
Hmm.
or I don't know. And then it's too late because I'm already shooting.
Hmm.
But when I do work with the mood board and I figure all the elements out before I go, I mean, look at what kind of makeup do I want to do? How do I want to do her hair?
Hmm.
What outfits do I bring? Then very often the idea evolves
Hmm.
during that process, and it almost always comes out a better result than
Hmm.
if I just go.
Go.
And the second reason why mood board is good is because it's really easy for me to transform my idea and my thoughts to my model, because
Hmm.
then we can look at it together and I can show her or him, this is the style I was thinking, this is the story. Maybe I have some posing examples in there, expressions, things like that. So we go into the session kind of on the same page.
Hmm. So can you tell me, so we're going to go a little bit more towards the business side. So do you
Yeah.
have, let's say, clients who actually coming to you and they like, okay, I have some kind of, well, they leave themselves to you and like, okay, can you create something with me? Or most of those images which you're creating, this is like you're hiring a model and then you just kind of following your concept and you creating this images mostly for yourself, and then I'm guessing you just selling prints or some fine art for your clients. Can you tell me a little bit more about that part?
Yeah. When I started doing creative or styled
Hmm.
portraits, it was just for me. I
Hmm.
do a lot of competition, and for
Okay.
making images for competitions, I like to push myself and do
Hmm.
things that I don't normally do. So, in the beginning, the images were just for myself, for
Hmm.
competitions, and for marketing as well.
Hmm.
But then I actively started to try and get these kind of sessions to be a part of my business as well.
Hmm.
So I think about 7 years ago, I started to do mini sessions.
Hmm.
It was like a short, we styled for 40 minutes and then we shot for 20 minutes. And then I can charge a smaller fee so that
Hmm.
someone who was like, I don't know, what is this? Is this
Hmm.
something? Because I mean, no one in, at least here in Sweden or in my small town, no one had done this before. So, but
Hmm.
when it was a mini session, it was kind of, yeah, I can try. So I got
Hmm.
a few clients through the door and they were satisfied and they posted their images and I could use their sessions for marketing, and then
Hmm.
I've built on that pretty much. It's not a
Hmm.
big part of what I do. I mean, still the bigger part of the sessions are still commercial and family and kids and stuff like that,
Hmm.
but it's a substantial part these days at least.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Perfect. So I have to ask you this, even I know this is not my favorite question, but I know people would crucify me if I wouldn't ask you about that stuff. Tell me a little bit about your equipment and your lighting setup. And I don't want to go into some like very, very specific details, but do you have, let's say, specific equipment you really like to work with? And is there like, any specific lighting you kind of like and you kind of get drawn into? Because based on what I see, you're very, very particular about your lighting. It's dramatic. It's spot on. If we could talk a little bit more about the technical part of your work, if you could share some of the informations with us, that would be awesome.
Yeah. As far as equipment, I am an Elinchrom, a global
Hmm.
Elinchrom ambassador. So I use Elinchrom, and I actually always have been. So
Hmm.
even when I started, some, what is that, like 25 years ago, when I started to try studio lighting for the first time, that was also Elinchrom. So I've always been Elinchrom. Um, Now since I like to shoot a lot, location shoots
Hmm.
when the weather is good. In Sweden, we have like half the year where it's snow, super cold, and no light. So,
Hmm.
so
Welcome
but
to
the other
Canada.
part of the year, yeah, it's the same for you. But so of course, I mean the three and the one and the five also, where you can just grab them and go because they're on battery, um,
Hmm.
are like I think the equipment that has most changed the way I work.
Hmm.
As for lighting, I don't know, because before I started to teach lighting, I was very much, I set my light and I was like, if someone asked me, they were like, why do you set this light? And I was like, because it feels
Hmm.
good. Because I'm very much I don't read the instruction book. I just go
Yeah.
by heart, and then it's this is what I
Hmm.
want, and I know how to get there. But I don't know really why. So that was
Hmm.
a big part for me, was I think when I started teaching, the one who learned the most was me,
Hmm.
because then all of a sudden I couldn't say to my students that you have to do this because it feels good.
Hmm.
I needed to know why. um, and then when I look at the lighting, no matter what type of light I set, I want my lighting to be like guiding for the
Hmm.
audience. So I want my lighting to tell the viewer where to look, and to
Hmm.
tell him or her what part of the image is important to me, and what is it that I want to show. And if you have that in mind, you can very much look at your own images and see, well, if I follow the light in my image, does the eye end up where I want it to end up? um so that, I think that's a good thing, a good like rule, or
Hmm.
what do you say, if you want to check your own lighting. But
Hmm.
then I'm a sucker for soft light. I use
Hmm.
big softbox,
Hmm.
and also I the light that I use the most is actually one light setup with a big
Hmm.
softbox and a reflective screen, and I shoot like very feathered.
Hmm.
So if you see my setup, I think you think I'm drunk, because because people are asking me, Is there any light that actually hits the model?" But
Hmm.
then I get like what I'm after when doing like a um, classical portrait lighting is that I want the tonation that I have on the dark side to always also be on the side where you get the light from. So you don't have that much light on her ear, but you get like a tonation from light to dark on both side of the faces, because that is like sculpting the face in such a
Hmm.
beautiful way. Yeah, you see it on the black and white there, very, yeah, you have the light coming this way, but you
Hmm.
also have like the shadow on that side.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, and also, I mean, if you use feathered lighting, what you also gain is that you get like a shadow on the other side of the nose that you don't get if you go directly with the light, because then the light hits here.
Hmm.
And with the shadow on both sides of the nose, it's the same thing there. You get like a sculpting effect, so you
Hmm.
see all her features
Hmm.
better.
Yeah.
But then I'm still learning, so I have
Mhm.
like a couple of standard setups that I use a lot, but then I always try to push myself and try to play with setups that I haven't used before, or gel lights, or I don't know, combination between long shutter speeds and flash,
Mhm.
and yeah.
So you're
So
exploring a lot.
yeah, I mean, it's a fun thing about this,
Mhm.
is that you can never learn everything.
No.
There's always something that you feel like when you feel like you're a beginner, and you have to like
Yeah.
dig in and do the work to
Yeah.
feel secure. So yeah, so it's that's a fun thing about this.
Absolutely. So can you tell me how teaching people photography impact your photography? Because you mentioned something which I always learn that my way, myself as well. That when I start kind of helping other photographers and teaching them, it's completely changed my photography. Because as you
Yeah,
said, you have to explain things which you never think about, right? And they're like, "Why did you
yeah,
do that?" And then your answer is amazing. When you said like, "Oh, it feels right," because I have
yeah,
exactly
yeah,
the same. You just don't know. You're just like, okay, that's the way it is.
yeah,
But when you have to start kind of dwelling on this a little bit more and think why you've done this, it's kind of completely changed the whole kind of concept. But can you tell me if that's impacts your photography, like when you start teaching and you're
yeah.
doing those workshops, if that's somehow kind of impacted the way you work nowadays? What kind of significant impact that whole thing had on your photography?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing that you have to like. If you, I think that if you want to teach someone something, you need to know like twice as much
Yes.
as what you're teaching. So
Hmm.
it has pushed me to be a better photographer for sure,
Mhm.
because I need to know all the different elements of, I mean, lighting, posing, communication, everything, and I have to break it down like we talked about. I need to know why I do stuff.
Mhm.
So that also makes me more conscious when I work, of why I do the things that I do.
Mhm.
But then I think also teaching has made me, I mean, it's really inspiring also to work with other photographers, and um, to me it's the most rewarding feeling when you have a student and you can like teach them things and inspire them to go off on their own and do like great things.
Absolutely.
Because I've always believed in sharing very much.
Mhm.
When I went into photography and joined the community here in Sweden, it was like about 20 years ago.
Mhm.
The climate here for photographers were very, what should I say, cold even.
Mhm.
I came from working in the camera store, being part of a big chain of stores. So I
Mhm.
was like used to go to other camera store managers, asking for help or
Mhm.
sharing my campaigns or my budget work or economic issues that I could
Mhm.
just call someone, and we talk and he helped me and I help him, and that's what I came from. And when I came into photography, I kind of anticipated that that was going to be the deal here as well.
Mhm.
But when I, as a new photographer, came in and I asked someone who was very experienced, and I was like, "Oh my God, this image is amazing! How did you set the light to get it to be so dramatic?"
Mhm.
And the guy answered, "Well, I'm not going to share all my secrets."
Mhm.
And I was like, "Okay." So I think everyone was very afraid of the competition,
Mhm.
which is like the most stupid thing, really. Because I mean, I can teach you everything I know, and you can teach me everything you know. And
Mhm.
I mean, our images will not look the same anyway, because
Mhm.
it's just what we know. I mean, how they look and how they become my style, that comes from here. So
Mhm.
I'm glad to share everything I know so that people can share that to someone else, and then we can
Mhm.
all be better photographers.
Yeah.
So I think it comes from how it all started for me, that
Mhm.
sharing and teaching and paying it forward is something that really matters
Mhm.
to me.
Yeah. But you know what? I have to say that I think we've gone through some massive transformation in industry in general for the last 20 years when it
Absolutely.
comes to sharing knowledge, because I've went through exactly the same experience. So my
Oh,
little story, I started shooting weddings. Like that's like most photographers here, that's how you kind of kick off this whole
mm,
photography journey, because
yeah,
that's where the money was. And I remember exactly the same experience. I went to some other photographers and asked for just give me some guideline, like some guidance. Like how did you get this image? Can you help me with sharing? Some of those little things, and they were very kind of like close to
yeah,
kind of even have a discussion with me. And I actually, the one story which I have, I went to like a photography studio, and I said to this guy who was running him, I'm like, would you mind if I could just maybe work for you for free, I don't know, twice a week? I can like sweep the floor. But he had a massive studio, and I just want to just like kind of see what, because I was so kind of inspired by what he does. And like the whole studio settings, I was just like, magic place for me. And he
yeah,
literally threw me out. He's like, just go away, never come back here. um and then slowly I could see photographers started sharing the knowledge. And I remember when I got into headshot photography, it was completely different experience, where people were sharing knowledge, kind of. And now we can see massive shift, right? Like nowadays
yeah,
people are way more open to um sharing, some of the stuff what they do, even publicly, right? Like, on
Yeah.
YouTube and all this,
Yeah.
workshops and all this stuff. And I think that's what also changed the photography a little bit, because as you said,
Yeah.
like, even if you give someone all the knowledge, all the informations, they're going to go take it and use it their own way. It's not going to
Yeah.
steal your work, and steal your photography or your business. They probably going to use it completely different way. So, but I
Yeah.
think it's also amazing that we live in that kind of world where we are able to share, and people are way more open. Even I think the conversation what we have right now, the podcast where people talk about what their life, like, photography journey, back in
Yeah.
the days you haven't seen any of that, right? Like, this is just a
No.
kind of maybe not new thing, but it's just this was evolving for the last 20 years for sure.
Yeah, I love our community as it is now because it's, I mean, both in Sweden and internationally,
Mhm.
I think there's a lot of love and support out there, people sharing for each other. And we have a beautiful community in Sweden where a lot of us compete in the same competitions all over the world.
Mhm.
And I think it doesn't matter who win really, because we're so
Yeah.
happy if it's someone else from Sweden, it's like, go Sweden. So, and
Exactly.
we help each other out, doing selections and
Mhm.
previewing and stuff like that. So
Absolutely.
and I think that also makes everyone better photographers.
Absolutely. Yeah. It just pushed the whole industry to completely different level.
Yeah.
There's no question about it. So let me switch the gears and
Yep.
let's talk about things which are a little bit more, I would say, controversial, and something that it's probably on our mind on a daily basis. And I want to talk a little bit about the AI technology, which is
Yeah.
knocking on well, it's already here. I know a lot of photographers there are, I would say, from one hand, some of them they're really excited about it, some of them they're terrified. There is heated discussion. They also, I've noticed a lot of people are afraid that it's going to impact photography on such a level that we don't even know which direction we are going. So what is your take on it? Like, how you look at this whole new technology, how this going to impact what we do. And
I'm sorry.
that's okay.
Yeah.
And what is your prediction? How this whole thing is gonna change our industry, photography? What's how you look at this whole new technology coming to our life?
Well, it depends on. I mean, I think you have to take the good with the bad a little bit.
Hmm.
I mean, there are a lot of good things with AI.
Hmm.
I use AI and text to image, like Mid Journey,
Hmm.
a lot to like, as I did with the mood boards,
Hmm.
just to like test ideas and to, I mean, prepare for shoots.
Hmm.
So like inspiration images, and also, I mean, if we are out there on social media, we consume a lot of AI images.
Yeah.
And I mean, since you can do anything, a lot of them are good inspiration. I mean,
Hmm.
I screenshot 2, 3, 4 images a week that are AI images that I
Hmm.
save to my inspiration library, and then I maybe take the crazy headpiece and think that,
Hmm.
oh, maybe I can work with that and do, if I do floor foam, and yeah,
Hmm.
so for that I think it's good. And also, I mean, all the tools, the AI tools that we get in our editing,
Hmm.
it,
Yeah,
it
that's huge.
yeah, that's huge for our business,
Hmm.
because in a time, at least here in Sweden, we had some tough years, and it's not really been to raise your prices has not been an option, because people here, I mean, the mortgages are killing people,
Hmm.
the fuel for their cars and the electric bills and stuff like that.
Everything gets so
Yeah,
expensive.
so yeah, so if we want our businesses to go better, we need to cut the costs or
Hmm.
cut the time. So the AI tools for editing has, like, I mean, cut my editing time almost in half when it comes to like commercial
Huge. Yeah.
portraits and
Huge.
and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So
Yeah.
so that's a huge thing. And it's, I mean, you can have AI do the boring stuff,
Hmm.
the groundwork, and
Yeah.
then you can step in and you can do the fun stuff
Yeah.
and put your signature on the images
Yeah.
with your kind of editing. So I think that's good. But then since I'm head of the Swedish championship,
Hmm.
and have been for the last 6 years, we've kind of gone through the AI in competition
Hmm.
kind of storm, or
Yeah.
whatever you can call it, because it was like a few years there where competitions weren't really keeping up. I mean, the
Hmm.
rules weren't really keeping up with what you could actually do. So
Hmm.
I mean, we have all heard about the Sony contest where a completely AI made image won the whole contest, and the photographer refused to accept the prize because he was like only making a statement.
Hmm.
So, and then I think nowadays in most of the competitions they don't allow any AI.
Yeah.
But we still have like the Federation European Photographers, the FEP Awards, which is
Hmm.
once a year, where they still allow some part of
Hmm.
AI created images and even stock images.
Yeah.
So that, I mean, I've been in a lot of discussions whether or not that should be allowed.
Hmm.
And I think when it comes to competition, where I mean, the whole point is that you are evaluated for how good a photographer you are.
Hmm.
I mean, the least you can do is create all the elements photographically. But
Hmm.
I think I mean, nowadays it's hard to find another competition that allows AI images.
Hmm.
So it's good for the business, but if you want to work on your photographic skills,
Hmm.
um, I think it's good that you're not allowed to use it.
Yeah, I know in Canada, I was part of last year those Canadian photography conference, and like, and like I'm not taking part of competitions myself, but I remember at that conference there was massive discussion on this, and the gentleman who is the head of competition, like we had dinner together actually, and he just jumped on this topic, like he was
Yeah,
so passionate about it. And in Canada also, like, they do massive vetting. So for example, like if image entry competition, they test the image if the image went through any AI
yeah,
kind of adjustments or whatever, and if there is any signs of AI kind of involvement in creating an image, they disqualify image like right on the spot. So they take this seriously. But also, I think that the technology is new, so it takes time till we'll figure out how we're going to even approach it, right? Because right now, what they told me, they're thinking about having kind of separate um kind of category that you can
mm,
have, let's say, AI image entry
yeah,
competition, and it's going to be primarily AI image, and then you can kind of
yeah.
look at it this that way. So I think the technology just entry our world so quickly that there's no regulation, there's no rules, like literally there's like a wild west at this point. It's getting better, I think, with the time, because we try to figure out how we approach this. But yeah, I 100% agree with you that when it comes to the boring parts of photography, like retouching and all this stuff, AI can take over and then do those things accordingly well, and save us time on doing the creative stuff. So yeah, I'm
And I mean
100%.
also, yeah, and I totally admire. There are some amazing digital artists that
Oh,
do
100%.
fantastic images, and they put hundreds of hours into
Yeah.
their images as well, even though they're AI and 3D. So it's not that I am against that, but it's just
Mhm.
not photography. I mean
Yeah.
that they are doing amazing images, and so does painters, and so
Yes.
does uh, illustrators.
Yeah.
Is that even a
Yeah.
word? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's different things. So I
Yes.
think the problem is when you mix it. I mean,
Yes.
because if you are allowed to use digital created images, you are supposed to be allowed to use like oil paintings and,
Hmm.
I don't know, textile art
Hmm.
or
But do you
yeah.
think
So
that maybe it's the naming problem? Because, like, if, as you said, like, this is actually what just hit me right now. Um, how we can call it, AI digital kind of creations and photography. It's not,
yeah,
because it's completely different process to create that.
yeah.
So maybe when we change the name for it, like a digital art, or like, I don't know, they will probably come up with something. Then we can have the same category, like painting, right? You
Yeah.
cannot call painting photography,
No.
because it's completely different way of creating this type of art.
Yeah.
So yeah. Perfect. Okay, so right now, what I would like to do, and if you don't mind, I would like to just dive in into your website and just kind of talk about some of those images. And what I'm
Mhm.
looking for, if you could just give me a little bit of context, how the image was created, maybe some ideas behind it, the concept, just to kind of, give people a little bit more understanding where you're going after with
Yeah.
particular images. So let me
It's also
kind of
going to be
dive in.
so exciting to see which images you
You
choose.
choose. Yeah. Okay, so let's start with this one.
Yeah. Yeah, that's oh my god, I misspelled it. Yeah, but it's supposed to be knitting to heal a broken
Hmm.
heart. Let's pretend we don't see the misspelling.
Yes.
Yeah, this one is actually it's an idea that I got from actually from a podcast. I
Okay.
was driving to the other big city in Sweden, so it took me like 4 hours in car, and I usually listen to things when I drive so that I don't fall
Hmm.
asleep because I do that very easily otherwise. And this time it was like a lady who talked about how she was part of a group of women who got together and used not only knitting but sewing and other types of arts and craft to heal from mental illnesses of
Hmm.
different kinds. So it could be like depression or um, I don't know what you call it when you like you have stressed so much that
Excited.
you, yeah, that's it. So and I think it was like it was so beautiful how you kind of go back to having to concentrate on using only your hands to
Hmm.
do something to get the mind to shut out to relax,
Hmm.
really, to take a break.
Yeah.
So so that's why it's knitting to heal a broken heart, or maybe a broken brain as well, but heart was a
Hmm.
little bit more easy. It was an easier concept to. So
Yeah.
I came up with the idea to do it before the day before I was doing this shoot. So I actually had like
Hmm.
two other ideas planned for this model, and then I called up my mom and I said, "Mom, do you have like yarn and the knitting tools?" And she said, "Yeah, I walk my dog early in the morning. I can just drop everything in your
Hmm.
mailbox, and then you can use it." So this is everything that she had, and then
Yeah.
I built a styling and a headpiece from it.
Hmm.
And also, I think that Emmy, who is the model, I only use amateur models. I
Hmm.
never hire models. So it's basically, I mean, the girl next door or the one who works at the cashier in the
Hmm.
supermarket or whatever. So this is someone that came for a family session at a friend of mine
Hmm.
that I was going to visit. So, and she said that if you want to do something, I have a girl that thinks it's fun and she's never done it before. So, and I
Yeah.
think she had an amazing way of taking the concept and deliver the feeling that I was after, just
Hmm.
in her gaze and her presence. So yeah, it was a really fun collaboration.
Yeah. And it's amazing because like right now it's and I think we have like spoken about it before we even kick off the podcast, that sometimes we see images and we don't really, well, don't, I'm not saying we don't pay attention to the details, but when you describe it, the story, this image has now for me has completely different meaning.
Yeah.
um and it's kind of fascinating that you can add like a story to it, which just completely changes dynamics and just brings so much more and meaning to the actual image, which is fascinating.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
that that's also fun with the competitions, because then you
Hmm.
you get to hear judges talk about your images,
Hmm.
and to see how the same image can be interpreted in so many different ways.
Yeah.
So the story that I competed with this the first time in the London last year,
Hmm.
and one judge said that his story was like how she had lost her mother,
Hmm.
who had been knitting a lot, and this
Okay.
was like her legacy. So it's
Yeah.
like, but I think that's a good, images are supposed to be able to be read differently.
Yeah. But also like open imagination, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Because you're adding a story which could really well fit for that image, like
yeah,
clearly you bringing something meaningful, and just your brain starts like kind of spinning different directions to add actual some interesting story to it.
yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's jump to
Mm.
the next ones. I love this one. Tell me a little bit more, because it seems like there's so
Yeah,
much details into this.
this was actually this is actually a live shoot that I did at a
Mhm.
fair.
Okay.
I'm also a Nikon creator, so I work closely with Nikon Europe.
Mhm.
So I, from time to time, I go out with them and I do like talks and or live shoots or stuff like that.
Mhm.
So what I wanted to show here, because doing live shoots, I the most important thing for me is that the audience can like uh, see that it's not that hard, and to
Mhm.
encourage them to go home and do something similar, or
Mhm.
to try and do it. So what I wanted to show with this image is really how you can like do something big and spectacular, and it doesn't need to be hard. So
Mhm.
here I showed, because this headpiece, I built it so that they could see. It's
Mhm.
built on a hat with, I don't
Mhm.
know if you call it oasis. It's like
Mhm.
blocks. Yeah.
Yeah.
So where you can like stick flowers onto him, and just how you build it up, and then work with like shapes. So
Mhm.
this image really doesn't have a story. It's more like I want to inspire
Mhm.
other photographers to try and do something a little bit
Mhm.
different.
Yeah. Well, I think it has a story because it's inspiration for others to
Yeah,
create things, right? Because that's,
yeah,
I think, the main. Because I think the photo shoot is a one story, but creating it, the idea, and putting together and working on it, thinking about it, as you said, you building something out of nothing and you try to make this kind of work. That's what is more kind of, well, not more, but it's a process which is a lot of fun, right? And the
yeah,
image is
yeah,
just the results of this. So
yeah,
absolutely. Okay, I want to jump into those images, because this is
yeah,
something,
yeah,
it's like you cannot just kind of pass this without kind of hanging your eyes for hours looking at it and
yeah.
analyze.
This was my COVID, actually.
Oh,
This is
COVID,
what I
yeah.
did during COVID. Yeah, I kind of always, for years, I'd been wanting to try and shoot underwater portraits with
Hmm.
controlled lighting, because I
Hmm.
had tried underwater photography before, but since I had like an underwater camera, like a compact,
Hmm.
so obviously I couldn't like use the studio flashes.
Yeah.
So I mean, and if you don't have the control lighting, you don't get the drama and the contrast that you
Mm-hmm.
get in the studio. So what I wanted to do was to bring what I did in the studio below the surface.
Mm-hmm.
But as it turned out, it was a lot harder than I had
Mm-hmm.
expected. So first, I tried to use my flashes above the surface. So
Mm-hmm.
this was actually the first time I tried a session like this, but this was the only image that I could use from the
Mm-hmm.
3 hour session in the
Wow.
pool, because
But you
I
nailed
first
it that one for sure.
yeah, I did, because I mean, towards the end, I just had to like take a step back and think, why isn't it going like I expect it to? And of
Mm-hmm.
course, like when the light hits the surface, it like spreads everywhere.
Yeah.
So you kind of get this milky, flat, boring kind of image that looks like
Mm-hmm.
natural light, even though you are using
Mm-hmm.
so
Artificial. Yeah.
so so what I did was like take a step back and think, okay, if I don't want the light to hit my backdrop, I need it to come from behind. So
Mm-hmm.
that's when this image actually I was successful with one frame that night.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I mean, this was a process that I worked on for, I think it's at least a couple of months. So we
Oh wow.
tried to use different cameras and different lighting
Mm-hmm.
setups, and eventually we figured out, or I figured out, that what I needed to do was to get the main light source below the surface, because
Mm-hmm.
not even do you have the problem with the light spreading everywhere, but you also, since there are like some waves on the
Waves.
surface, yeah, that also creates like a pattern of lights and
Mm-hmm.
shadows on your model, so which you obviously can't control. So in
Yeah.
one image she can have like a patch over her eye, and on the
Yeah.
next
Yeah.
she has something over her mouth, and yeah, it's impossible. So
Mm-hmm.
what we did, so I actually called Ellen Chrome in Switzerland, and I was like, hi guys, do you know, if I want to use the flash underwater, would you
What would you
but then we
say?
figured out, yeah. So actually, they have a model that the LEB 500 that actually
Mm-hmm.
has like the light head, like a separate piece, and then you have
Oh,
like the
okay.
battery, and all the other stuff is like in a box. So
Mm-hmm.
that one we could use. So I covered it in plastic, and then had an assistant. At the same time, when the model and I went under the water, she popped it just underneath the surface,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and it was
Okay.
like amazing from the first shot. So that was one
Yeah.
thing, and then the other was, it was really hard to get the focus right,
Mm-hmm.
because I was working with the D850 at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
the autofocus couldn't. It was a little bit too slow. So once
Mm-hmm.
it actually had gotten focus, we had both drowned, which is not a good thing. so,
Yeah.
so what I actually did was, Nikon borrowed me the Z7 II,
Mm-hmm.
which made the whole difference, because we tried like different scenarios where we were using like fixed focus, but I mean, it's really hard to stay in one place in the water.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard for me, and it's hard for the model, so that was not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
So there was so many mistakes during this project, but
Mm-hmm.
once I got a hold of it, I got so many amazing images. So absolutely, I don't think, if I had known from the beginning how many hours I would put into this, and how much like brain activity it would take to figure
Mm-hmm.
everything out, I don't know if I had gone into it. But now I'm happy I did, and now
Yeah.
I do underwater portrait workshops
Oh wow.
every other
Okay.
year. Yeah, so we have
Oh,
one now in May, and we had, this is the fourth time. So that's also really
amazing.
amazing, because I mean, I did so many mistakes, and now I can invite photographers that don't
Mhm. To
have to
help
do
them.
all the mistakes. They can just do
Mhm.
it right the first time,
Mhm.
and just do the fun part. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. It's really amazing.
But don't you agree that in photography, if you want to create some interesting image, you have some ideas, you always go through all these things what we shouldn't do, or things they don't work till we get to
Yeah.
the point that okay, now it's working, because it's never
Yeah.
go other way around. Like, you have idea and like, okay, I'm gonna do this way and it's gonna work. Usually never works. That's what I learned too.
No,
No.
no. But I mean, those are the best times because you
Yeah.
come out on the other end and you have learned so much. I
Yeah.
mean, the times where everything is just working, working, and I mean,
Boring.
yeah, it's fun, but you don't learn anything. So,
No.
you
No.
embrace the mistakes.
Yes, absolutely. No, I just want to say this is absolutely incredible image. I think it's one of
Oh,
the
thank
books
you.
for sure.
I,
Um,
I I don't know
I
if it
mean,
says that. Yeah, I call it "Safe from the Waves." So I mean, the story for this one is also, since it's like a hectic world out there.
mhm,
I can't say I am a diver, but I have been diving a
mhm,
lot when I was younger. And what I
mhm,
really enjoyed with diving was how it could be like stressful and loud and all these things above the surface.
mhm,
And then all of a sudden, when you came under the surface, it was just like my pulse went, my heart start beating slower, and everything is just quiet and it's calm, and
yeah,
the fishes, they swim slowly, and it's
mhm,
like, yeah, it's a different pace.
yeah.
So that's what I wanted to show with this image.
Yeah. And you know what, also, like, I want to add a little bit of my story to it, because
Yeah,
I used to,
me
back in
too.
the days, I used to work as a lifeguard for like many, many years back in
Mm.
Poland and Canada. So like the water is kind of my second world, which I love.
Oh,
I swim a lot. And and swimming for me is like a therapeutic thing for my life. So
yeah,
literally I swim every single day, like, well, sometimes 6 times a week, for about,
oh,
hour, a couple hours a day. And
yeah,
it's like I can be depressed, I can have bad day, but as soon as I get into the water, like this whole world is kind of, I mean, maybe not disappearing the outside world, but you're just getting into the completely different environment, which makes
yeah,
you peaceful, makes you like forget about everything what is happening out there, and then you can just kind of, you have this time where you can just kind of completely relax and cut yourself off from the reality. So this image, that's actually what is resonates to me so much,
yeah,
because from one hand it's kind of chaos, but from the other hand it's just this peace, which you can really see it and feel it from that image.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so fun to hear where what your images gives to others.
Yeah. And I think
So
also,
yeah,
like, we look at images from our own experiences and
yeah,
our own
absolutely.
lives and stuff like that, right? So I think that's really speaks volumes to me.
And
Okay,
actually,
so let's, yeah,
just one more thing about that image. If you are curious about how it's made, if you go to my
okay,
Instagram and like scroll down uh,
scroll, okay,
a bit, there is actually footage, film of
okay,
this specific shoot, so you can see how she poses underwater and how this model, she was just amazing. She could be
hmm,
under for I don't know how long.
wow,
So if you want to see BTS from it,
sure.
it's on my Instagram.
From one hand, I will see it, but from the other hand, like, it's just, I just want to enjoy it, because it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
you don't want to see the sometimes the what,
yeah.
like, I'm
The
interested how it was
milky,
created. There's no question about it, but it's
yeah,
gonna, like, I just want to just have the feeling the way it is, because
yeah,
it's just kind of
yeah,
showing something very, very extraordinary here. Okay, so let's, there's a couple more which I really love. Okay, let's go to this one.
yeah. This is the same model as
Hmm.
knitting to heal a broken heart. So this was actually the initial idea that I had for her,
Hmm.
and I kind of wanted to just. I think I'd seen a movie or a TV series a couple of
Hmm.
years ago where it was very much. What do you say in English? There are like Arabian fairy tales almost.
Hmm. Okay.
Uh, so so what I wanted to do was kind of just build a character from the fairy tales,
Mm-hmm.
and how she is like, I don't know, beautiful but kind of shy was what I
Mm-hmm.
want, what I was going for. So yeah, and it's not anything more than that really. So this is just a character that I had in the
Mm-hmm.
back of my mind that I wanted to do.
Perfect. Um,
We could actually go with the red one if I can choose one. If you go
yes,
up
this one.
one, no, the three, the yeah,
This
that
one.
one. Yeah,
Okay, sure.
this is a more recent one,
Mm-hmm.
and I've also done it in another version where I have like a location in the background. Um, but the story behind this one is, I call it one broken soul, two crushed
Mm-hmm.
hearts. And the mom in the picture is my cousin,
Mm-hmm.
and she works in a school in Stockholm, where there
Mm-hmm.
are a lot of kids from parents who have come from different kind of war zones, or
Mm-hmm.
uh, countries where they had to flee for different kinds of reasons. So
Mm-hmm.
there, in their families, there are a lot of like unsolved trauma,
Mm-hmm.
which of course makes kids that are not feeling well and cannot get support from their parents
Mm-hmm.
like they should. So that was really the story behind this one, how you can like as a parent be so destroyed by what you have gone through, so
Mm-hmm.
that you cannot emotionally be there for your kids.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's the story behind this one. So that's why it's like an altar, and the
Yeah.
color red is for like sacrifice and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, and also like the china ware, how it's two
Mm-hmm.
crushed and one broken. So yep.
That's amazing. And you know what? Again, I like this is something which has been on my mind for quite some time. You know, like how we could show a little bit of bigger story to each image, right? Because as you said,
Yeah,
as we talked before, you know, everyone can interpret this image completely different way. But then when you add the actual story to it, again, just changes the entire feel even from the image. And I think the
yeah,
colors you use, the red, is which is really powerful color. Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary.
thank you.
Okay, so there's this image.
Yeah.
So
And
before we go jump into this, you know what it's fascinating for me sometimes is we see images, they kind of stick in our head and they're there for whatever till probably the end of our lives. And we
yeah.
don't know who create them. And you know, I've seen this image so many times on social media.
Oh
I don't know, like this image was just keep popping up for me on whatever many reasons and many ways. And then you know, when I started kind of like basically contacting you, and then I saw this is your image, because you know, as I said, like, you know, sometimes we know images but we don't know who the photographer is sometimes,
yeah,
right?
absolutely,
I
yeah.
was just like, oh my god, you know, she created that image. And it's amazing. So I just,
Thank
if you
you.
could just share some of the story behind that one and the concept
Yeah,
and the whole kind of process of creating it.
absolutely. This was actually, I do a lot of commercial work, but I don't do
Hmm.
like a lot of advertising images,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. So that is something that I enjoy very much and that I don't do very often. So
Hmm.
um, this image was actually created because I gave myself an assignment pretty much for
Hmm.
practice. So I
Okay.
thought that I wanted to do an image that was like a commercial for a lipstick, And why I
Mhm.
chose a lipstick was because my grandma, the same grandma who gave me my camera, actually,
Mhm.
she always said that even though she had been like in the garden whole day and she had like, not her best clothes on, when she was going to jump in her car and go to the store, she always put on some lipstick. So it
Mhm.
was like, if you put on some lipstick, you kind of
You're
feel
good to
better
go.
about yourself, and yeah, and it's kind of, yeah, so it is empowering in some way. So that's what I wanted to incorporate in this image. So I
Mhm.
kind of wanted the whole feeling of the image to be like someone who is super strong and who is confident and who is sassy,
Mhm.
and just because she'd put on some red lipstick. So and then I played around a little bit with, because I wanted it to be kind of leaning towards high fashion. So
Mhm.
I knew I wanted something going on, like a big hair piece or
Mhm.
stuff like that. But I mean, since I am a photographer and not really a hairstylist, I have my
Mhm.
limitations for what I can do. So that's when I thought, maybe if I work with a silhouette thing, then I can
Mhm.
make the hair piece or the hairstyling out of pretty much anything. So
Mhm.
this hairpiece is actually just three paper plates that I had
Mhm.
taped together and put on her head to go like that. And then it was actually also, I struggled a little bit because I wanted the background to be like really really red,
Mhm.
and I tried first to like just use a red background, like but it wasn't like red enough because I wanted it to match the
Mhm.
lipstick. So then I came up with the idea, or maybe that's obvious to everyone else, I don't know, but I had never thought about it before, to
Mhm.
like use a gel and light the background, the red background with the red yellow light. So
Mhm.
that's actually a good tip for anyone who wants to use a colored background and they want to boost the color. Because up
Yeah.
till then I had only used like yellow lights to change the color on things.
Mhm.
I mean, if you want to a blue backlight, or if you want to tone a background, you can put on different colors. But I had never used it like a red background and a red gel light.
Mhm.
So that worked also really well.
Very well.
And then we had to like, yeah, just work with different hand posing. And I mean,
Mhm.
it's amazing how Alice, who is the model here, how she could really, I mean, you don't have that much to work with when you don't show your
Mhm.
eyes and you only have like the posing.
Mhm.
And I demanded or wished for her to portray like
Mhm.
fierceness and and things like that. But I think she nailed it, and
Nailed
I'm
it.
super happy with the result we
Yeah.
got.
Yeah. But there's also one little element, and I don't know, you probably spot it. I don't know if someone tells you that, or this was done purposely. But if you look at the gap in her arm and in her body, it looks like a heart from here.
It looks like a heart. Yeah, yeah. That
Yeah.
was actually. I wish I could say that it was on purpose, but it wasn't.
Oh,
But
okay.
I saw it afterwards, and I was like, "Oh my god, it looks like a heart." But
Yeah.
it was nothing I thought about when I shot it. Then it was all
Yeah.
about getting all these fingers to be posed in a
Yeah.
beautiful way, and yeah,
The other part came itself for sure.
yeah.
So let's kind of pick one more image, but I'm gonna let you pick which one you want me to show, and then you can add your story because I think some of those
Yeah,
images they have way more stories that
uh,
I want to.
yeah, we could scroll down. Maybe we could go with the yellow one, but let's see if we
This
have
one,
another one. Oh, should we do the COVID one? Maybe. Uh,
covered.
no,
Which one
let's
is
go up.
this one?
Let's do the yellow one. That it's a fun one.
This one.
The paint. Yeah.
Okay.
This was a collaboration between me and a Swedish designer who does like jewelry and sunglasses
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. So this was actually a line of sunglasses that were made uh, for a fundraiser to get money to preserve the bees
Mm-hmm.
in Sweden.
Okay.
So the glasses were in different colors, and she sent it to me, and she said like, "Do your thing. You can do
Mm-hmm.
whatever." And I was just like, "This is so much color," and I had always dreamt about pouring color onto someone.
Mm-hmm.
But then I mean, it's hard to figure out how to, because I mean, you can't use like paint and pour it on
Mm-hmm.
a girl. You can't do that. But then I figured out that I could do like paint for toddlers. You know, the
Mm-hmm.
paint where they can paint with their fingers.
Yes.
That kind of paint is like completely free from dangerous stuff, and you can like almost eat it. So,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a little too thick. So what I had to do was like whisk it with water so that you
Mm-hmm.
could pour it. And then it was super fun because the model, not me, I did two of these images, and the blue one, she had never shot with me before, so she was like new. I have like a model group. I think it's about 20 boys and girls who like to model as much as I like to be a photographer. So
Mm-hmm.
so we have a model group together. So I had just signed her into that one, and this was kind of short notice. So I was like, anyone's free tomorrow because I have a project. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
really know how it's gonna turn out. But if you want to join, I'm happy. So she came to the studio and she had like curled her hair and put on some nice clothes and everything. And I was like, oh my God, you're here. Amazing. Can you like put on this bathing cap and then tuck away all your hair? And she was like, oh my God. And the other girls who had been with me for a couple of years, they were like, just trust the process.
Exactly.
It feels crazy, but it usually turns out good. So, and it did. She was happy afterwards.
That's really
But it's
stunning
also fun.
picture
It's
for
also
sure.
fun to just, I mean, try things, figure it out. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
do something, just figure out how you want to do it and just try. Because, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the worst thing that can happen is that it doesn't go well and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get nice images.
And we
But then
learn
you,
something from it too, right?
yeah, absolutely, yeah. So
Perfect. So I we passed over hour.
yeah,
Um, we could no, no, that's fine. We could go for about probably more hours because the conversation I we could just go on and on and on. Um, but
I mean,
um, but what I would like to do, I would like to invite you again, and we can just kind of go back to our conversation in near future.
absolutely,
I know you're super busy, but I think there's so much to unpack here that I'm glad we were even able to talk. But I'm sure we can kind of continue this. So
yeah,
before
sounds good.
we finish the podcast today, I have one more question for you.
Yep,
What would you say to photographers or people who would like to go into this industry? Because I know a lot of people, they would like to be creative, they want to do photography, but they don't know if this is the right place to go, especially with what is happening right now with the AI and whatever. But I think you're the example that we shouldn't be afraid of these new technologies. We should just create
embrace
stuff,
it.
make things
Yeah,
happen. Don't be afraid to do things which maybe at the beginning sounds crazy, but that at the end they can end up with some amazing results. So what would you tell to young photographers who are starting off and they want to kind of follow their passion and they want to create images and they want to be in photography industry?
well, I would just say just go for it. I mean,
Hmm.
that's what I say to my kids as well. I mean, if
Hmm.
your heart is really in it and if you are prepared to work really hard and I mean do all the hours to get there, it's the best occupation you can ever have. And
Hmm.
I mean, I might, it's really hard to be super rich as a photographer, I
Hmm.
think. there are not many of us that you can see on yachts and having palaces,
Yeah.
but you don't become rich on money, but you get rich in so many other ways, because this
Mhm.
is like it's such a fun industry. And I mean, as a even it, I don't know what kind of photography it is, but if you like do have a portrait studio, or if you're a
Mhm.
commercial photographer, I mean, you get to be a part of so many interesting things and meet so many wonderful people. So
Mhm.
so if you're only prepared to it not going to be a walk in the park,
Mhm.
I think it's go for it, because
Yeah.
it's amazing and it's so much fun.
And I'm sure nobody's going to regret it, right? I think
Yeah.
that's one of those things. And then I 100% agree with you. You cannot be super wealthy being photographer, but the legacy you're leaving, the things what you do to other people, and how impact you might make on the world and leaving legacy, that's what's something which is priceless in my opinion. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, also you have to go ask yourself what makes you happy, because I
mm,
mean that's everything you do in life is, I mean, if you can do things that you makes you feel good and makes you
mm,
happy, then it's the right thing, I think.
absolutely. Teresa, thank you so much for
Thank
this
you.
incredible conversation. You are extremely inspiring photographer, and then as I said, I will be following your work, looking at your new creations. And again, I'm sure there's a lot of coming out soon. And I know you're doing workshops, and then I'm going to plug in everything to this podcast so people can not only take a closer look at your work. I know you're extremely known in this industry, so whoever is in the photography probably heard about you and know you and is familiar with your work, but we're going to plug that in anyways.
Yeah,
And then if you have any workshops, anything happening which could help other photographers, I also gonna plug in everything so people kind of take a closer look and potentially sign up and then learn more from you, because you've
yeah.
got a lot of amazing stuff to share. And I think people should look closely at what you do, because this is what we need in photography nowadays, people who inspire others. So thank you for doing everything what you do,
Thank
and
you.
thank you again for joining this podcast. That was pleasure talking to you, and as I said, I would love to come back to this conversation and talk to you again.
Absolutely, anytime. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much.